everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I am Tim Sohn, hanging out here in Northeast Pennsylvania with Sohn Social Media Solutions, and I'm so excited for this week's episode. First, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend and trusty co-host, Mr. Jim Fuhs, who's wearing matching StreamYard sweatshirt today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Maybe I should have worn my other, I have the new StreamYard sweatshirt that's got StreamYard across the chest. Maybe I'll wear that next time so we're not twinsies, but that's okay. Wait, I digress. But
Yes.
great to be here. And it's interesting that, Emily and I know I was going to try to talk with her before the show, but I had some tech issues. Emily, I don't know if you realize we have some things in common, and that we were both contracting officers in the military, and I was the head of contracting for the Marine Corps pre-positioning program at Blunt Island in Jacksonville, and I'm also DOEA Level 3 certified. But as you can see, I don't do that stuff anymore. I enjoy having the show with Tim.
Yeah.
But and I went to the I guess you'd call it the graduate school of the Naval Academy, the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. So you always never know what commonality you have with people. And you're living in Northern Virginia, I want to say.
I'm in Stanton, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley.
Oh, Shenandoah. Okay, yeah, because I'm originally from Virginia, but now I'm in Atlanta, and we're supposed to get snow on Sunday, Tim. I'm not real sure that I'm happy about that, but I know my wife will be thrilled.
We just had some the other day, and our kids loved it. We went sledding together. I enjoyed it too. It was a blast.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of snow in Virginia. I know 95 was like they got stuck. People got stuck on it, and it made me think about something. I don't know if you guys have thought about this. As excited as I was thinking that electric cars could be, there's a problem when you get stuck in the snow. Your electricity in your car runs out, and there's no way to recharge it.
Yeah,
a little food for thought. But I digress. We need to get back on the show. But yeah, Emily, I mean, very excited to have you. I mean, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I mean, you've had an amazing career with the military and the government. Now it seems like you, like me, have transitioned away from that.
Yes, I have in some aspects. So yeah, I mean, when I was 18, I made a decision that I would go to the Naval Academy, and that ended up shaping the next 38 years of my life, right? I went to the Naval Academy, graduated, became a supply corps officer, got stationed on a ship, was in charge of like dispersing for the ship and submarines that ship tended to. Did the laundry, was responsible for laundry, dry cleaning, all that kind of stuff on the ship, which was kind of fun. And then I got to work for the chief of the Atlantic Fleet, where I helped write the policy for when ships could dump plastic at sea, because this is in the mid 80s, people were just, you go out on a ship, just dumped everything overboard. And that medical waste was washing up. And so, I don't know, we haven't really come too far, it seems, with plastics in the Navy, although the Navy on their ships had these things called plastics waste processors where they recycle the plastic. So that was kind of fun. And then I got to be stationed at the Naval Academy, and then I got into the contracting arena. And that's when I got out of being in the Navy on active duty and became a civilian for the Navy. And I worked as a contracting officer for several different commands. And then one of them was the Naval Air Systems Command, which bought all the airplanes for the Navy and the Marine Corps, and I was a contracting officer. And then after that, I got into the small business program for the Naval Air Systems Command, and then ultimately the Navy, where I was the advisor to the Secretary of the Navy and all of the senior leadership for the Navy and the Marine Corps on how to create more opportunities for small businesses to participate in our contracts as primes and subcontractors. And that was an awesome job. I really loved it. In May of 2019, I was 56. That was my minimum retirement age. And I wanted to do something different. And I noticed that I was not feeling my feelings. I was really busy. And I knew that when I retired, all of that would go away. It was just naturally, I'd have all this free time and I would be great. And I wasn't. And that's when I discovered this mental fitness program. And we get into that later, and that's one of the reasons I want to encourage people to create a life they love living, is because within 1 month after my retiring, my daughter called me and told me her dad had cancer. We weren't married, but, he was still her dad. And 2 weeks after that, he was paralyzed in both arms, and he passed away in 5 months. And I saw him die with regrets. He too worked for the Navy. He was a West Point grad. He hadn't retired yet. He was 64. And just imagine when somebody can't move their arms, everything that you have to do for them. We helped take care of him. And I saw him die with regrets. And I said, I do not want to die this way. There's so much more to life. What's holding me back? And I'll tell you what holds us all back. It's our minds. Mm-hmm. And that's why I decided I'm going to coach on mental fitness. And that's why I host my podcast and live show. And so anyway, that's a little bit about me.
And I know we've got some questions, but one of the things, Emily, that I think too, that you and I probably have both seen a lot, especially being veterans, and I retired from the Marines 12 years ago, is I think a lot of veterans and people that work for the government struggle with that. Oh, I've worked all this time. I've got this nice pension. I'm going to do nothing. And I just don't think that that's realistic. And I think what happens sometimes, that's why I got out of the government contracting thing. You need to do something you're passionate about.
Right.
And I think that's where sometimes the military doesn't do a good job of helping us go on to that next stage. And it sounds like that's something you're actually trying to help people do.
Definitely. It's got to be something, I thought that work was just hard. And the reason it was hard for me is because I wasn't really doing everything. I wasn't living up to my strengths. And I've learned that with some assessments I've taken since I retired and working with coaches, is that data analysis, I'm like 92% of people in this whole world love doing data analysis more than me. And in the contracting officer doing those spreadsheets and all the data and back all your stuff up with data. It's just, I can do it, but it's not my strength. And I didn't love it. And it caused me stress every day. I was stressed at work, and I just thought that's how work was. Now I'm doing something that I really love, and I am not stressed. And it's not because I'm retired, because I have even more work to do than when I was working for the Navy, but I've figured out I'm in ease and flow with it. And I didn't want to retire and just do nothing. I wanted to be a coach, but I wasn't able to. I also thought that I was going to have so much time to work out. And one of my coaches encouraged me to meditate for, every morning. And she said, how much time can you spend meditating? And she had these different choices, an hour down to like 15 minutes. And I have a hyperachiever saboteur in my mind. I'm like, well, I'll do an hour, but I probably wouldn't do that. So I'll do 15 minutes. And she wanted me to do it for 40 days straight. And every week she'd ask, what day are you on? I said, 1. And she said, well, what's going on? You don't understand. I'm busy. I've got a lot of stuff to do. I don't have time for that. And I wasn't making time to work out. And it was my mind and limiting beliefs holding me back and keeping me busy. Because look, I was kind of like, if you picture an elephant when they're a baby, they're tied up with a little rope and they don't realize they can leave. I was still like that. I was sitting at my desk working. Then sometimes I'd realize, oh, it is nice out. I guess I could go for a hike today. But my mind wasn't letting me do that. I had to shed so much conditioning to get to where I am now. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Emily. Before we dive into questions, we just want to say thank you to everyone who's here with us in the comments. Thank you, Gail Robertson, for being here. She is here almost every single week. So thank you so much for being here, Gail. Gabe Leal, thank you for being here. Thank you for shining the light bright on all the LinkedIn Live creators of the world. We so appreciate you for being here. Stefan Kaplan, thank you for being here. He says, mental fitness, just as important as the physical, especially throughout this pandemic. Looking forward to this one, Tim, Jim, and Emily. Thank you for being here, Stefan. And Stefan is relaunching his Spin It Social Hour, focusing it on social good. And his first guest is Tim McDonald, who is a cancer survivor. So Stefan put the details for that show in the comments. Everybody should definitely check that show out. And Emily is actually going to be a guest on the Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer show that I host with Carol Ulker coming up in a few weeks. So we're excited to have you on for that, Emily.
Yes, me too.
Deborah Sweezy is here. Thanks for being here, Deborah. It's great to have you here. Elizabeth is here from Santiago de Chile. Thank you for being here, Elizabeth. So appreciate you. And Anita is here from across the pond. Great to see you. And Russ Hedge. Hey, Russ. Great to see you as well. So Emily, tell us about your role and responsibilities as the director of the Office of Small Business Programs for the Navy and the Marine Corps. We're curious.
Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about that because you might have some people that are watching that might be thinking, well, I would like to sell what I would like to offer something to the Navy and the Marine Corps. So basically, the Navy and the Marine Corps, is a big organization. So when you say I want to sell something to the Navy, it's like, or the Department of the Navy, which consists of the Navy and the Marine Corps. It's like, well, who in the Navy? You heard Jim worked at a Marine Corps command in Jacksonville. Well, there's actually 10 big commands, one that buys ships, one that buys airplanes, one that, I'm simplifying it, does IT kind of stuff, one that does all of the supplies and medical and things like that for the Navy, one that does all the buildings and construction. So there's lots of different organizations within the Department of the Navy. So the first step is figuring out who buys what you sell. And within those 10 commands, there's subcommands, and there are small business professionals that help with that. The small business professionals understand and network with small businesses and know what those companies have to offer. And then they also understand what the technical community, like the program managers or the engineers or the logisticians, what their needs are. And they kind of help make connections. And so I was in charge of responsible for people at those commands, and then also on the Secretary of the Navy staff. So responsible for working with the head of contracts for the Navy and the Marine Corps as to what policies we could implement to create better opportunities for small businesses. For example, I'm sure that my predecessor, the person that took over for me, Jimmy Smith, has been doing a lot with respect to COVID. Like our small businesses that are on contract for the Navy and the Marine Corps, how are they being impacted by COVID, and what policies or contract modifications can we put in place to help ease that burden on them? That's just one example of an area where small business professionals would get involved. Another is when the Marines were moving from Japan to Guam. How do we involve small businesses in building up the base at Guam? Joint Strike Fighter, how do we encourage small business participation? Even though Lockheed is the big contractor for that contract, how do we encourage small business participation? We would review acquisitions and things like that. We'd look at the data. The Navy obligates on contract quite a bit of money, the Navy and the Marine Corps, just under $100 billion a year. And about $17 billion goes to small businesses as prime contractors. So when we monitored that, how well are the commands doing? How much money are they spending on contract, and how much money is going to smalls as prime? Where are the barriers? We would conduct roundtables. Where are the barriers? We'd meet with small businesses. And I just talked with the guy that took over for me yesterday, and the current Secretary of the Navy is flying to all these different sites and bringing him with them and conducting roundtables all over the country to listen to small businesses about what are the challenges they're having in doing business with the federal government. And there are challenges, but what we tend to do sometimes is point, like it's the government's fault. If the government would make this change. But one of my coaches said, when you point, you have three fingers pointing back at you. So one of the things we encourage is the small business owners to look at themselves, which is what this positive intelligence program helps with, to see what barriers is your mind putting in place to prevent you from getting contracts with the government, because it's not all the government's fault, So that's a little bit of the roles and responsibilities. And anybody who wants to learn more about how to do business with the Department of the Navy can just Google Department of the Navy Office of Small Business Programs or small business, and their website will come up. And there's lots of information on that website that will help you get started.
That's awesome. Is that this website here,
Yes.
Emily?
Mhm. Correct.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Jim, do you want to take this next question for Emily?
Yeah, so you used to coach entrepreneurs on how to approach the Navy and Marine Corps. Now you're an entrepreneur yourself. What have you learned from your entrepreneurial experience?
A ton. And when I say a ton, I think too, it's a ton about myself. I used to notice when companies would, I never sold anything in my life, right? I was a basketball coach, in the summers when I was in high school. Then I went right into the Navy and worked for the federal government, and the government decided how much I was worth and what to charge, and I didn't have to market anything. And so when I got out and retired, and I called my retirement a graduation because it's like I was moving on to something really exciting. I was excited. I felt expansive. Um, I had to learn a lot of things. And so I noticed the challenges. I knew the challenges that small businesses had in marketing to the federal government from a government contracting and a government small business perspective. Didn't really understand from the other side. And so some of the things that I learned is the advice that we gave to small businesses, I needed to take for myself. Solve a problem. So many times you're like, look, I've got this gadget. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Buy it from me. But if the government doesn't need it, they're not going to buy it. They have a budget that Congress gives them, and it's to buy what they need. So what you have to do is determine how this gadget can help the government, how it can make their lives easier. Look at it from their point of view. That applies as a coach, which is what I am, or whatever you're doing, it applies as a live stream producer. You're not selling live stream producing, you're selling how to make it easier for them. You're looking at it for them. So solve a problem, help the customer see how you can help them. And it's about them, not about you. Be detached from the outcome. Work through your money issues. I had so many limiting beliefs about money and charging. So many coaches want to give their services away for free. I've done that, and the clients don't get the outcome that they are looking for because they don't put in the effort because they're not invested. I was trying to help them out. It's kind of like when I tried to help my son out I've talked about this before. He's an alcoholic. He's 5 years sober. I tried to help him out, but he had to do it himself. So coaches, you might want to help people and everything, but they have to be invested too, or they're not going to change and reach their goals.
I think that's so important. That is probably one of the biggest things. Until someone's ready, right? It's like they've reached that pain threshold to want to make that change themselves. It doesn't matter how much you want to help them. And I think, both of us, Emily, as parents with older kids, have seen that, right? And it's as much as you want to tell them how to do it, if they're not ready to, it's tough. And I think it's the same in business, right?
Yes.
That client, and I love the fact that you say that, because I know that was a big learning point for me, and Tim, love to get your thoughts as well. Is when you give away stuff for free, right? To a point, it's okay, but if they're not willing to invest, well, it's free. I don't really need to do it. But if you're paying me every month, you're either going to keep paying me, and I'm going to get, and at some point it's like, if you want to give me your money and not fix your problem, that's really goes back to the finger pointing that Emily was talking about
Yes.
earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it. When the pandemic started, I started offering a course on live streaming, and I did give it away to some people for free, and I offered it as a pay what you can. And I kind of saw mixed results. Some people, even though it was free or pay what you can, they were all in, and some people were not, and they came up with all sorts of excuses. And it was the pandemic, and the world was crazy. So, uh, but I've definitely seen mixed results. And I mean, but from my own perspective, I know that I'm more likely to, if I'm working with a coach, and Jim, I didn't tell you this yet, but this Sunday I'm going to be working with Stephanie Liu for a half-day strategy intensive to level up my remote live producing business, which I'm super excited about. If I'm paying, a decent amount of money, I'm more likely to be all in. Whereas if I'm paying nothing or a small amount, the likelihood that I'm going to be putting in as much effort is not as likely, just from my own experience. Um, so
Exactly
yeah,
right. Exactly right. And, I don't know, people can tell you that. I guess I tend to have to learn the hard way and experience it myself, but I've experienced it.
yeah,
So, yeah. And then detach from the outcome, and then also take care of yourself, and just start. You hear that a lot too.
yes,
Don't compare yourself to somebody who just started 3 years ago when you're just starting today. If you knew all of the things that had to happen for me to get to where I am now, I couldn't be where I am now if I hadn't gone through all of that in the past 2.5 years since I retired. So you're on your own journey. Don't compare yourself to others. So all of that applies to doing business with the government too.
Oh yeah.
yes,
We could have a whole show just on that, Tim, but
Yeah.
yes, yes. Right now, what we're going to do is we are going to give a shout out to our sponsor, StreamYard, which we love to use to produce this show every week. And we are going to play a brief message from them right now, and we will see you on the flip side. See you soon. And we are back. We're doing the Tim dancing on the Tim and Jim show. And we are so excited to have Emily Harman here talking today about mental fitness. And now we're actually going to dive in and talk about, Emily, why are you such a big advocate for strengthening our mental fitness?
Because I've been through the program myself and I've seen how it has transformed my life. Somebody could say, well, of course, Emily, you don't have any stress. You're retired. That's not. I told you when I retired, I was probably even more stressed. But I enrolled in this coaching program with Shirzad Chamine. He wrote this book, Positive Intelligence. It's why only 20% of teams and individuals achieve their true potential and how you can achieve yours. And I went through the program, which is all about looking at yourself. And now I coach it. And basically, the program is all about our mind. We are not in control of our minds. If you were in control of your mind, you wouldn't let it wake you up at night and not go back to sleep. If you were in control of your mind, you wouldn't have limiting beliefs about moving forward with your business. If you were in control of your mind, you wouldn't be as stressed. And so basically what Shirzad, it's based on research, and what Shirzad says is we all have in our minds a judge. You're familiar with your self-critic, I'm sure. I am too. But our judge is more than just the self-critic. It judges situations like, oh my gosh, I'm just making something up, but Jim is having trouble logging into StreamYard right before the show. What do we do? You could get really stressed about that and panicky, or you could just kind of let it go. And a lot of times it's those little things like that can add up to make a day so stressful. And then sometimes it's big, huge challenges. Like the SecNav's here and I can't get the link working and our show is not going to go on. It could be something big, but it's what we think about it. And our judge judges those things and says, this is bad. And that's the left part of our brain, kind of like the reptilian brain, which we've all heard about. The judge will then go recruit some other saboteurs. And you can take an assessment from my website that will tell you what your top saboteurs are in your mind. There's 9 of them in addition to the judge. My top one used to be hyperachiever. Now it's second compared to restless. Hyperachiever tells me, Emily, achieve, 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 achieve. You're going to be happy. And I did that with the Navy, and I was still, something was missing. I wasn't happy. I was stressed. I wasn't feeling my feelings. I didn't have the best relationships. Restless is my other one, which tells me this task's boring. Move on to this one. Move on to this one. And my condo can get messed up, and it's messy because I don't have time to do the dishes because I got to do this and then I got to do that. And then I'm starting my business, so I take on this project. Someone's saying you can be $1 million coach in a day. Let me take their training. It's crazy. And pleaser, trying to please everybody. So, but there's other ones that you're probably familiar with or heard of. The avoider avoids difficult situations and conversations. The stickler, really dot your I and cross your T. The hyper rational, what's the data say? Clearly I worked with a lot of people with the hyper rational saboteur in government contracting, right? What's the data say? And I was like, I don't care about the data as much. And so there's 9 of them. And so you start to learn, you start to catch them telling you lies in your mind. And you learn how to strengthen your self-command muscle to say, no, mind, I am not going down that path. You're not going to stress me out with these lies that you're telling me. I'm going to switch to sage, which is the right side of your brain, which is where you have creativity, compassion, you're in flow, you get curious, you get out of that negative saboteur energy and get more into sage, heartfelt energy, and you approach life differently. And you can catch yourself when your saboteurs are hijacking you and switch to sage. And this can apply in so many different areas of our lives. In government contracting, it's bad. The government request for proposals isn't detailed enough. It's terrible. There's no way I can bid. It's bad. The subcontractor's not, the prime isn't giving my company any work. There's so many different ways we can look at life. And those saboteurs cause all of our stress, all of our anxiety. And I have transformed so much that just things like that don't bother me anymore. And you learn a simple step called a exercise called the PQ rep, which helps eliminate that stress and helps you be more in the present moment. It's different than meditating, but that's why, sorry about my computer, I put it on silent, but that's why I'm so into it, because I've seen those saboteurs hold me back from really going all out in my business. I've seen the saboteurs hold people back from marketing to the federal government. I've seen those saboteurs impact my son and my daughter with anxiety and my friends. I've seen it so many times, and it works. That's why I coach it. So that's a little bit about it. And that's how it can help you in running your small business. It can help teams you can imagine a meeting with a team, and who's in the meeting? The saboteur, the sage, the judge, the hyperachiever, the avoider. You've seen them all in a meeting together, how they interact. How can we quiet them and be happier, reach our true potential? That's why I like to coach in it.
I think that's some of those descriptions you made, definitely I could see, I'm going to have to check into that, because I can see where I've had a lot of that in the past. And I think too, like the competitive nature, I think in general, I won't say all, right? I don't want to be a stereotype, but I would say a lot of people that go in the military are competitive. So they always feel like I got to be doing something more and something more. And then some people, they got to have an award, right, for the work they did. And so it's, once you kind of are able to step back and say, is this really important, right? Is it, or am I stressing myself out because I'm worried about achieving something that maybe isn't achievable, right? I think there's a lot of that perfectionism. You're talking about, right, requests for proposals. I used to get frustrated when I was working with clients that we would try to get in touch with a contracting officer for clarifications, and they wouldn't respond to us. And, and it's like, so then you start, calling the government bad names because they don't, but you also, I'm sure you've seen it. You have people that they look at this as not as their passion, but it's their job. So it's like, well, I'm going to do my job.
Right.
I'm not necessarily going to go above and beyond because, they don't think that they're making an impact. And it's kind of a sad thing. And because we don't do enough of that training to get people mentally sharp.
No, we don't. And I can give you some just simple examples of how it's impacted me so that to maybe help people see. like I was flying out to visit my daughter right before Christmas, not during all the crazy travel, but the middle of December in Denver. And my flight was late, and I could tell my daughter was like anticipating that I was going to be stressed out because I hadn't seen her in a year. My flight was delayed. And she's like, "I'm sorry, Mom." And, and I said, "It's okay. I'll just read my book." It didn't faze me in the least. And it didn't even occur to me. She's like, "Wow, you've really changed." And I would have just been stressed, like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't have traveled at Christmas," and beating myself up, right? I didn't. I was just like, "It's okay. It is what it is." And people can tell you, and you should just accept things as it is what it is. But doing it and knowing and knowing it are two different things. And it just happened. Another thing I was telling Tim before the show, I was talking to the guy that took over my job as the Office of Small Business Programs Director, and he was telling me how now the current Secretary of the Navy is really big on small business. You never know with different leadership. And so he's holding roundtables all across the country. And the guy that took my job is flying with him on his private plane to go to these meetings, to have them all across the country. Old Emily would have been, my hyperachiever would have been like, "Dang, why did I leave? I could be doing that. Why did I leave? I could have, that could be me." It didn't faze me at all. I'm happy for him. I'm not competitive. I'm happy for him. That's awesome. And no stress over it at all. No comparison. No like, "Oh, I could have achieved that." Didn't bother me at all. And so those are little things. But when you look at your whole life about how things stress you out, and I've done a couple of podcast episodes with some of my clients on this. My roommate from the academy took it, and her husband was flying for the air. She's an executive with the Federal Reserve Bank. Her husband's flying for the airlines. He had to take an early retirement. So he's home. She's home. She's got a controller saboteur. She is stressed. She took the program, changed her behavior, and that changed him, with him not even having to take it. So we work on ourselves. We improve ourselves. Our whole world improves.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, like, I know even for me, when I retired, and it's going on 13 years in August. I had a lot of people like couldn't believe that I was retiring. I literally retired 1 week before my first look at Colonel, and like, "How can you do this? You're doing all these great things," but my family was more important to me than continuing to chase. What is it you
Right.
sometimes are chasing in the military? And
Mhm.
I think that also applies in corporate world. And I know you and I have both seen this, Emily, where people will leave the military because, as we used to kind of joke, "Oh, well, I'm going to leave the military because then I'm going to be with my family," and it's the white, the white picket fence thing, if that's something they still say. But then they find out to move up in these companies, they may move more frequently or travel more than they did when they were in the military.
Right.
And because they weren't prepared for that, it causes a lot of damage in the family unit. And, a lot of these people end up in divorce. And because this is something we don't talk about, right? This is
Right.
something I would say, I don't know, maybe it's been the past 3, 4 years, maybe because of the pandemic, that we finally started to address mental fitness, mental health, and that it's okay that everything's not perfect and you need to talk about it and get yourself right.
Right. Right. For sure. And everyone was telling me what I should do when I retire. Cause yeah, I could have gone and made a lot of money working for some big company or consulting on how to do business with the government. But I noticed that makes me contract. Like, I don't want to do it. And your limiting beliefs can tell you, well, there's no other way. There's nothing else you could do. That's all you're good at. So you may as well just do that. And I'm like, so I had to overcome a lot of limiting beliefs and know that I can chase my dreams. I can go out, I can create a life I love living. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what I want to help others do. So our minds tell us, you may love that, but you can't have it. That's not true.
Right.
Speaking
Mhm.
of what you just said about living a life that you love living, Jim, could you take this next question for Emily?
Yeah. So, Emily, why is creating a life you love living now and coaching others doing the same thing so important to you?
yeah, it ties into my whole story, right? Of, working for the military, feeling stressed, not realizing that it was because I wasn't working in my strengths. Everything, a lot of things, some like the small business job was great because it was a lot of interacting with people. I could be visionary, which is what I like to do. But the contracting was just like data and it caused me a lot of stress. And I just thought that's how work was. I didn't really wake up to the fact that there was something else I could do. And then throughout that time, I was a single parent most of the time. My daughter suffers from anxiety. I'll tell you, I asked her permission. She gave it to me. I've never said it on a show, but when she was 15 and a half, she was raped. So imagine what that does to a mom. And at the same time, my son was drinking. And so my life has been like trauma. And my first husband, the one that passed away, their dad was verbally abusive. So it's just trauma. My body was used to trauma. And that's another thing. When I retired, I didn't have the trauma. So my mind's like, well, what do? You create it yourself, right? Because that's how you live, in chaos. So I had to realize all that about myself. And then when Bruce died, that's why I added the now. It's like, don't wait for circumstances to change. Don't wait for a situation to change. What can you do today with what you have to create something that you really love? And we're meant to continuously grow and expand. So what you love today might not be what you love tomorrow. But I saw all those limiting beliefs. I recognize them through the help of coaches. Those limiting beliefs in myself. And I've always wanted to be a coach. I've always been a mentor my whole life. And that's why I decided to do it. And because it's now, we can't wait. Bruce didn't get to retire. He didn't. I have his files here. He has like 3 files on retirement, everything he was going to do when he retired. He died before he could retire at 64. Everything he was waiting to do, he didn't get to do. And he had regrets because he was verbally abusive. I saw him sit there. He didn't talk about it a lot, but I saw him having regrets over how he had lived his life. And we stop when we work for companies, we do strategic planning. What kind of strategy are we doing on our own lives? We just go through the flow. We don't stop and think, is this what I really want for my life? And what do I really want? And what do I want to create? And to stop our mind from telling us that we can't. That's why I coach in that.
That's very, very powerful. I mean, I think that's so true. I think, even for us in the businesses we do, I know Tim and I both have shifted from where we maybe started. I was much more of a social media manager when I first started doing this. Now I'm much more into doing, not only, live streaming and production, helping other people level up their presentation skills, but also, I love what I'm getting to do on Amazon as a Amazon, I kind of joke influencer, but that's their words, not mine. But who would have thought that somebody in their mid-50s who had a military background would be doing that, right? But
Yeah,
you have to allow yourself. It's like, you know what? There's no reason I can't do these things if it's something I enjoy.
right. No, it'd be like, well, what you should do after you leave the military is go be a consultant, or you should do something that's related to that. That's what you should do. That's what
That's
people
what
do.
I was told. Yeah.
And it's like, stop and think for ourselves. What do we want?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that for the longest time.
Yep.
So
Emily, as you've evolved and become more clear on the focus of your business and your podcast / live stream, how has your messaging changed?
yeah, I'll just share that a little bit. It's interesting because about 6 months before I retired, I knew I wanted to host a podcast, and I was thinking about what I would host it on. And I started to develop my website. I knew I wanted to coach, but I hadn't been trained in coaching. And I thought, well, what am I going to help people with? So the podcast started out pretty well. It was on facing adversity and moving forward. And then gradually, as I was discovering things about myself, I said, facing adversity, moving forward, and discovering yourself along the way, because it's that adversity that helps us really learn who we are. And that's what I was doing. And now I'm getting ready to change the theme again. Starting next week when I go live again, it's going to be create a life you love living now, because it's aligned, and that's how it's evolved. And now it's aligned with the Onward movement that I started back in April of 2020, which is all about creating a life you love living. So my messaging is aligned. Initially, when I was thinking about, well, what am I going to coach on? It's like, well, I'm really good at getting a lot done. And so I'm going to help people with time management. Ha! That is, I have come so far from that, like managing your time, checking your time off on a to-do list and stuff. I am like a completely different person than I was when I thought that's what I would coach on. Because life isn't about checking off your to-do list. It's about being present in the moment and living your life and creating a life you really love living. And when you're doing something you love, like you both are, I don't think you approach work as checking things off a friggin' list. And everybody can find that for themselves. And so that's how it's changed. But it wouldn't have changed if I hadn't started. You just have to start. And then be awake enough to take a break. I just took like almost a month off. Take a break, and that lets your subconscious mind work on what's next, because you're not going to do it from your thinking mind. It has to also come from your sage, from your heart. And then to do that, you have to get in touch with your feelings. Whereas when I retired, if someone asked me what I was feeling, I would tell you, I don't know. I could tell you what I think about it. And I can tell you my feelings are either happy, sad. I couldn't name my feelings. So now I'm more in tune with my whole body as I lead my business, not just my thinking brain and checking things off a friggin' to-do list. That's how it's changed.
Yes. So Emily, before we wrap up, talk to us a little bit about who is your target client? How do you help them? And then finally, how can people connect with you? How can they find out more about Emily Harman and what she does?
Okay. My target client is people, about my age, probably. You tend to coach in the area, something that you've been through, but people in their 50s, maybe close to 60, that are thinking about retiring and what they might want to do next. And or people that are still working and just thinking that something's missing. I don't know really what it is. And so I have this coaching program called the Onward Accelerator coaching program, which leads people through these steps of creating a life that they really love living. And it requires doing a lot of introspection. So I coach people on that. And the mental fitness program fits into that. So people could do my mental fitness program separately, or they could do it combined. I've had clients do it either way. But they go kind of hand in hand. So that's how I help my clients. I'm working on updating my website, but it's emilyharman.com. And that's how people can connect with me. And you can listen to a lot of my episodes. The one published on the 3rd of January on mental fitness, where I interviewed my roommate from the Naval Academy. And another one's coming up on Monday about mental fitness. And the one that came out this week is an interview with my coach, one of my coaches. And we talk all about how, the transformation I've had in working with her for the past year. So that's how you can find me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And that's it. Thank you guys for having me on on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. This was great.
Yes, this was terrific. Thank you, Emily. And our guest next week is going to be Sarah Clay. She's going to be talking about how to use LinkedIn to sell without being salesy. So we're really excited about that. I remember seeing her at Social Media Marketing World before the world shut down. So it'll be great to see her here on the Tim and Jim Show.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. See you next week for another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. Have a wonderful week. Bye.